some people learn really well under pressure. Most of us don't. Most of us, when the pressure is up, our frustration heightens and our decision-making skills go out the window. So we are not going to do a painting for the first time that is a high pressure painting. We're going to start with small steps. We're going to take it in increments that are low investment wise, money and time, and we're going to learn how watercolor behaves that way so that we don't have to feel frustrated about wasting time and money on a painting that didn't turn out the way we thought because of simple things. Wet on wet, and then we're going to move on to graded wash. These are the two, I think, top essentials that you need to know moving forward. So let's start with those. Graded wash is basically a value scale. We're going to desaturate as we move down the page. I'm putting little labels on my book. I know that may be overkill, but I like them. They look nice and neat. I used to have students write all of this in their books, but it honestly just took up too much time to write them out. We need that time to paint. So I just printed them out on address labels. Okay, let's go ahead and wet our paper, and then we're going to put saturated color throughout. If yours is right, it will look kind of like a tie-dyed shirt. That's the effect that wet paint on wet watercolor paper will have. As soon as we touch it, it just kind of bleeds and crawls. Water is the transport for this medium. Oh, I love it. It's so pretty. I could just do wet on wet watercolor all day. It's so fun. Just dot it around. Use the colors that you really enjoy. Careful mixing complements. They turn to brown. But have some fun with it. The samples are pressure free. You just get to have fun and experiment and play around with this. There's going to be plenty of time where the pressure is going to start mounting in a painting. Today is not that day. We are going to have fun with this. For our graded wash, we're actually going to wet the page again. So you can see just a glossy sheen, not a puddle and not a damp page. It's somewhere in between. When you've done that, add this heavily saturated stripe at the top. I'm putting mine at the top. Work that back and forth, just kind of moving it, and I am hoping that I will run out of pigment. So the color in my brush is being stretched over such a large space. If you need to tip your paper up and let gravity help you out, or if you need gravity to slow you down, tip it the opposite direction and kind of push it back to that saturated portion. I'm going to go back for one more load of this purple. Man, I love this purple. It's vivid. And these are the Windsor and Newton Cotman series. So they're not professional grade, but man, they got a good purple out of it. Whew. Okay, once that is dry, we'll be ready to start preparing for our salt for texture. It's adding texture to the paint by sprinkling a wet paint surface with salt. I'm going to go ahead and label my pages. And also have your stuff ready for resist, which you'll need crayon. If you want to use masking tape to make those little white spots, you can use that. But I'm going to separate these on the page. For the salt texture sample, it is important that you have a good amount of water a heavy gloss, and you can see that the paint that I've already added is traveling or wanting to travel. So when you add more pigment like this, make sure it's very rich. I would call that percentage of pigment 90% pigment, 10% water. Try to get a lot of bleeding happening. If you do that, then you're setting your salt up to be successful. If you don't, it's just harder to see the technique if you're using almost like a pastel or a faded out desaturated color. It shows a little bit, but it's not quite as intense. So I wanted to use some intense colors, and when the salt is sprinkled, and it doesn't take very much, just speckle it out. Water and oil don't mix. Oil pastels create a barrier between the paper and the water. Masking fluid, Frisket, utilizes the same qualities, but I find using a crayon or oil pastel is a great first look at what those more expensive materials will eventually do for you. Take a couple of passes over the same pathway, making sure that there's no gaps that the water can seep through. I'm going to use a really heavy black and show you how bright the oil pastel still remains. There's a little bit of pigmented water beading up on top of the waxy surface. That does not bother me in this circumstance because this is a sample, this is for fun, so I'm not heavily concerned about that. It feels like to me this is almost invisible ink, and my kids love invisible ink, so this type of reveal is very satisfying and I just love it, and it never gets old to me. I just change up the design and do it all over again. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope to see you again. Have a blessed day.